My name is Jeannie, and at 67, I still remember the turning point of my life at 42. I moved in with Thomas, a widower whose 3 children needed a motherly touch. For 4 years, I poured my heart into his family, cooking every meal, attending every school event, and drying every tear. Then one evening, while scrolling through his phone, he casually shattered my world with 7 words. "Where are you watching from today?" If you have ever had to stand up for your worth in a relationship that took you for granted, hit like and subscribe as I share how I finally found my voice. I met Thomas Crawford at a community fundraiser for the local children's hospital. It had been 7 years since my divorce and I had grown comfortable with my quiet life. The autumn charity gala was something I attended yearly, but this time was different. Thomas stood across the room, tall, with salt and pepper hair, a warm smile that reached his eyes and a confidence that drew people to him. "Forgive me for staring," he said when we finally spoke. "You just look so kind, and kindness is something my family could use right now." Thomas was a successful architect with his own firm in the city. He had lost his wife Elizabeth to cancer 3 years prior and was raising 3 children alone. Jackson was 12, serious and protective. Lily was 9, artistic and sensitive. Noah was just 6, still carrying the confusion of a child who lost his mother too young to fully understand why. Our conversation flowed easily that night. There was no awkward flirtation or pretense, just 2 adults sharing honest stories about our lives. He spoke of his struggles balancing work and childcare, and I told him about my 20 years as an elementary school teacher before moving to administration at the local college. My own 2 children were grown and living on opposite coasts. My son David worked as an engineer in California, and my daughter Sarah had settled in New York with her husband. My house had grown too quiet. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" Thomas asked as the event was winding down. "Just adults, good conversation, no pressure." Our first few dates were lovely. Thomas was attentive and present. He asked thoughtful questions and listened to the answers. When he spoke about his children, his eyes lit up with pride despite the exhaustion that clearly weighed on him. By our 5th date, he asked if I would be comfortable meeting them. "They need good influences in their lives," he said. "Especially the younger 2. Jackson remembers his mom well, but Lily and Noah were so young when she died." I met the children on a sunny Saturday at a local park. Jackson was standoffish at first, studying me with suspicious eyes that had learned to be protective. Lily approached cautiously, but warmed quickly when I admired the drawings in the sketchbook she carried everywhere. Noah was initially shy, but opened up when I helped him name all the ducks by the pond. Over the next several months, I grew to love these children. I would visit on weekends, sometimes helping with homework or joining them for movie nights. I taught Lily to make my grandmother's famous snickerdoodle cookies. I helped Jackson with his science project when Thomas was stuck at work. I sat with Noah, patiently helping him sound out words in his reading books. 8 months into our relationship, Thomas invited me to dinner alone. The children were staying with his sister for the night. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his napkin throughout the appetizer. "I have something important to ask you," he finally said. "The kids adore you, Jeannie. You bring light into our home that has been missing for too long. Would you consider moving in with us? I know it is a lot to ask, but we need you. I need you." I hesitated. At 42, I was careful about major life changes. "This is a big step, Thomas, for all of us." I know, he nodded. "But I see how natural you are with them, how much happier they are when you are around, how much happier I am. We could build something wonderful together." After 2 weeks of careful consideration, I agreed. My house went on the market, and I prepared to start this new chapter. On moving day, even Jackson helped carry boxes. Lily had decorated a welcome sign for my bedroom door. Noah gave me a slightly wilted bouquet of flowers he had picked himself. Thomas hugged me as we stood in what would now be our bedroom. "Thank you for taking this chance on us. This is a new beginning for all of us." That night, as I tucked Noah into bed, he whispered, "Are you going to be our new mom?" "I cannot replace your mother, sweetheart," I said gently, "but I promise to care for you with all my heart." His small arms wrapped around my neck. "That sounds pretty good, too." As I closed his door, hope filled my chest. This was a family that needed love, and I had so much love to give. The first 6 months living with Thomas and the children were full of adjustments, but also joy. I learned each child's morning routine, their favorite foods, their fears, and dreams. I hung their artwork on the refrigerator and cheered at their soccer games. Thomas and I fell into what seemed like a partnership, trading off responsibilities and supporting each other. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. It started with small changes. Thomas staying an extra hour at work. Then 2. Then dinners kept warm and eventually cold in the oven. My role expanded to cover the gaps. I began driving the children to all their activities because Thomas was consistently unavailable. I helped with homework every night while Thomas answered emails in his home office. I attended parent-teacher conferences alone because Thomas had important clients to meet. By the end of our first year together, I had reduced my hours at the college administration office to part-time. The children needed someone available after school, and Thomas was rarely home before 7 in the evening. "You are a lifesaver," he would say, kissing my cheek before disappearing into his study with his dinner plate. The first real red flag appeared when Thomas canceled our planned family trip to the lake house at the last minute. The children had been looking forward to it for weeks. I had packed all the supplies, prepared special snacks for the drive, and even bought new swimming gear for everyone. "Something came up at work," he explained vaguely. "You take the kids. They will have just as much fun with you." The disappointment in the children's eyes matched my own, but I put on a brave face. "Dad has important work to do. We will send him lots of pictures and have a great time anyway." We did have fun at the lake, but it was different without Thomas. That night, as the children slept in their bunks, I called him. "We miss you," I said. "The kids were really looking forward to fishing with you tomorrow." "They have you now. That is enough," he replied, his voice distracted. "Listen, I need to go. Client calling. Love you." The call ended before I could respond. Something cold settled in my stomach. Had he always been this dismissive? Or was this new? The pattern continued and deepened. I found myself cooking all the meals, doing all the laundry, attending every school function. I was the one who stayed up late helping Jackson prepare for his history exam. I was the one who took Lily to her piano lessons each Wednesday and sat through the practices at home. I was the one who read with Noah every night, patiently helping him through each word. Thomas was physically present at dinner, perhaps 3 nights a week, and even then his attention remained on his phone. The children grew accustomed to talking to me, instead of him knowing I would listen while their father scrolled through emails or messages. The first serious argument came when Thomas missed Lily's piano recital. She had practiced for months mastering a piece that had challenged her. Thomas had promised to be there. "I am so sorry, honey," he told her that morning. "A client meeting came up. I cannot reschedule." Her small face crumpled, but she nodded bravely. Later, after a flawless performance that brought tears to my eyes, Lily looked out at the audience, searching for her father's face. I saw the moment she realized he was not there. That night, after the children were asleep, I confronted Thomas. "You broke her heart today. She worked so hard on that piece for you." Thomas barely looked up from his laptop. "She understands that Daddy has to work. Besides, she had you there cheering her on." "That is not the same thing, Thomas. These children need their father." He sighed with exaggerated patience. "They have you now, that is enough. I provide for this family, Jeannie. Someone has to pay for piano lessons and new soccer cleats and everything else they need." I swallowed my anger, but something shifted inside me. Was I really just a convenience to him? A way to outsource his parental responsibilities while he focused on work? By the holiday season, I was doing everything while Thomas took credit. At the neighborhood Christmas party, I overheard him telling a colleague, "The house looks amazing this year. The kids are thriving. Having Jeannie has really turned things around for us." As if I were an appliance he had purchased rather than a partner. That night, looking at Thomas across the room, chatting and laughing while I made sure the children were not having too many cookies, I felt a twinge of resentment. But then, Noah ran up to me with frosting on his nose, and Lily wanted to show me the ornament she had made, and Jackson actually smiled when I complimented the way he had helped the younger kids. The love I felt for these children kept me anchored. They needed stability, and I was determined to provide it even as doubts about my relationship with their father grew. 2 years into living with Thomas and his children, my life had transformed completely. I was no longer just helping out or supporting Thomas as a partner. I had become the primary parent in every way that mattered day to day. My mornings began at 5:30, preparing lunches for everyone, including Thomas. By 6:15, I was starting breakfast while organizing the day's schedules. Jackson needed his science project for first period. Lily had ballet after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Noah struggled with reading and needed extra practice before his assessment on Friday. Thomas would appear around 7, grab his coffee, kiss the children quickly on the tops of their heads, and be out the door by 7:15, often without more than a few words to any of us. After dropping all 3 children at their schools, I would work my part-time hours at the college, rushing to finish by 2, so I could pick up Noah, then Lily, then Jackson. Afternoons were filled with homework supervision, driving to activities, preparing dinner, overseeing baths and bedtime routines. Thomas typically arrived home between 7 and 8, sometimes later. He would eat the dinner I had kept warm, ask perfunctory questions about everyone's day without listening to the answers, and either retreat to his home office or sit in the living room scrolling through his phone while I managed the bedtime chaos. Despite the imbalance, I formed deep, meaningful bonds with each child. Jackson, now 14, was struggling with bullies at school who targeted him for being quieter and more studious than the other boys. One afternoon, I found him sitting alone in the backyard, trying to hide the fact he had been crying. "They said I am a weird orphan," he admitted after gentle questioning, "that nobody wants me, not even my own dad, since he is never around." My heart broke for this boy who tried so hard to be the man of the house. Over the next several months, I helped Jackson find his confidence. We discovered his talent for photography, and I drove him to weekend workshops where he could develop this interest. I attended his academic competitions when Thomas was too busy and cheered louder than anyone when he won the regional science fair. Lily, at 11, was blooming into a thoughtful, creative young woman. I taught her to bake using my family recipes, and during these sessions, she would open up about her fading memories of her mother. "Sometimes I cannot remember what her voice sounded like," she confessed one day as we kneaded bread dough. "Does that make me a bad daughter?" "No, sweetheart," I assured her. "It makes you human. We can honor her by telling stories and keeping her spirit alive in the way we love each other." We created a memory book together, gathering photos and writing down all the stories she could remember. Thomas was too busy to contribute much, but his sister Andrea shared valuable memories that brought tears to Lily's eyes and healing to her heart. Noah, now 8, faced his own challenges. His reading difficulties frustrated him to tears some days. The school suggested he might have dyslexia, but Thomas dismissed their concerns. "He is just a late bloomer," he said, unwilling to consider that his son might need extra support. So I researched dyslexia myself, found specialized tutoring techniques, and worked with Noah every evening. I celebrated each small victory, each word conquered, each story completed. The day Noah read an entire picture book by himself, his face lit up with such pride that I had to leave the room briefly to wipe away my tears. "You did not give up on me," Noah said, his small hand finding mine. "Not even when it was really hard." These moments with the children filled my heart, but my relationship with Thomas was deteriorating beneath the surface. He began criticizing my parenting decisions regularly. If I allowed the children an extra hour of television on a weekend, I was spoiling them. If I enforced homework before play, I was too strict. No matter what approach I took, Thomas found fault despite his minimal involvement in day-to-day parenting. "Jackson should be focusing on practical subjects, not wasting time with that camera," he commented, after I had spent my own money buying Jackson his first real photography equipment for his birthday. "Lily does not need baking lessons. She needs to focus on academics if she wants to get into a good college," he said, dismissing the joy and confidence these activities brought his daughter. "Noah is just lazy with his reading. You baby him too much," he declared, undermining months of patient work helping his youngest son overcome significant learning challenges. The financial strain grew as well. When we first moved in together, Thomas had been clear that he would handle the household expenses. "You are giving up so much to help with my children," he had said. "The least I can do is make sure you do not have financial worries." But gradually this changed too. He began forgetting to transfer money for groceries. When household items needed replacement, he suggested I should contribute my fair share. When I pointed out that I had reduced my income substantially to care for his children, he shrugged it off. "You would be paying rent and buying food somewhere anyway," he said. "At least here you get the joy of being with the kids." As if my caregiving was payment enough. as if I should be grateful for the privilege of raising his children while he advanced his career. Then came the work function that opened my eyes completely. Thomas rarely invited me to his professional events, but this particular client appreciation dinner required partners to attend. As we mingled with his colleagues, I overheard him introduce me to his boss. "This is Jeannie, the kids' sitter," he said casually. "She lives with us and handles everything so I can focus on work. It is a great arrangement." The kid's sitter. Not his partner. Not the woman who had been mothering his children for years. The kid's sitter. I felt as though I had been slapped. Throughout the evening, I maintained my composure, smiling and making conversation while inwardly reeling. On the drive home, Thomas chatted about potential new clients, oblivious to my silence. That night, lying awake beside his sleeping form, I confronted an uncomfortable truth. I had become a convenience in Thomas's life. An unpaid nanny, housekeeper, and cook, who also provided emotional support and intimacy when it suited him. The realization was devastating. But the children. Oh, the children. They had already lost one mother. How could I even think of disrupting their lives again? So I stayed swallowing my hurt and resentment, telling myself that my love for Jackson, Lily, and Noah was worth the pain of being unvalued by their father. The day everything finally shattered began, like many others before it. Noah had come down with a fever the night before, and I had been up with him several times, soothing his discomfort and monitoring his temperature. By morning, he was still feverish, but resting more comfortably. I called the school to report his absence, rearranged my work schedule to stay home with him, and settled in for a day of caring for a sick child. Thomas poked his head into Noah's room before leaving for work. "Sorry, the little guy is sick," he said, not coming closer than the doorway. "I have meetings all day, so I will probably be late tonight." Noah spent the day drifting in and out of sleep on the couch while I worked nearby, ready to provide medicine, water, or comfort as needed. By afternoon, his fever had broken, and he was beginning to perk up, asking for soup and wanting to watch his favorite movie. Despite my own exhaustion, I decided to prepare a special dinner that evening. Noah was feeling better, and Jackson had aced a difficult math test he had been worried about. Small celebrations matter in a family, and I wanted to acknowledge their victories. I prepared Thomas's favorite roast with all the trimmings, helped Jackson and Lily with their homework while it cooked, and even managed to bake brownies for dessert. Noah, still in pajamas but much improved, helped set the table. "Dad is going to be so excited about your special dinner," he said carefully, placing forks beside each plate. Thomas walked through the door at 7:30, later than the typical dinner time, but earlier than I had expected given his meetings all-day warning. The children brightened at the sound of his keys in the lock. "Dad, Mom made your favorite dinner because Noah is feeling better, and Jackson got an A on his math test," Lily announced. The word Mom slipped out occasionally from Lily and Noah, though never from Jackson. I had never corrected them, letting them define our relationship in whatever way felt comfortable. Thomas barely looked up from his phone. "Great," he said absently. "Let me just finish this email." 20 minutes later, we were finally seated at the table. The food was no longer at its best, but the children were hungry and excited to share their day. "Dad," my teacher said, "my photo essay might be selected for the school arts journal." Jackson said, attempting to engage his father. That is nice," Thomas replied, his attention still on his phone beneath the table where he thought we could not see. "Thomas," I said quietly, "could we please have phones away during dinner? The children want to talk to you." He looked up with annoyance. "I am in the middle of something important, Jeannie. More important than hearing about your children's day." The words slipped out before I could stop them, edged with the exhaustion and frustration of years. Thomas set his phone down with exaggerated patience. "Fine. What is so urgent that it cannot wait until after dinner?" The children fell silent, the excitement draining from their faces. Noah pushed his food around his plate. Lily studied her water glass with intense focus. Jackson's jaw tightened in that way that reminded me so much of the protective boy I had first met. "Never mind," Jackson muttered. "It is not important." After an uncomfortable silence, I attempted to revive the conversation, asking Lily about her art project and Noah how he was feeling. The children responded, but the warmth had gone from the evening. Thomas returned to his phone after a few minutes, not even bothering to hide it anymore. When dinner was finished, the children helped clear the table without being asked, sensing the tension in the air. Thomas retreated to his study with barely a word of thanks for the meal. After getting the children settled for the night, I knocked on Thomas's study door. My patience had reached its limit. "Can we talk?" I asked, standing in the doorway. Thomas sighed. "Can it wait? I have a presentation tomorrow." "No, Thomas, it cannot wait. It has been waiting for years." He leaned back in his chair, his expression making it clear I was inconveniencing him. "What is it?" "I need you to be more present with your children. And I need you to show some appreciation for what I do for this family. I was up all night with Noah. I rearranged my workday to stay home with him. I made a special dinner to celebrate the kids' achievements, and you barely acknowledged any of it." Thomas scrolled through his phone as I spoke. Actually scrolled through his phone while I was pouring out my heart. When he finally looked up, his expression was cold. "You should be grateful I let you stay here, Jeannie. You are just a babysitter. Do you think I do not notice how you try to replace their mother? How you have the kids calling you mom now?" The words hit me like physical blows. Just a babysitter. After 4 years of loving his children as my own? "I have never encouraged them to call me that," I said quietly, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And I have never tried to replace Elizabeth. I have only tried to give your children the love and support they deserve." "Well, I never asked you to do all that," he continued, warming to his cruel assessment. "You chose to quit your full-time job. You chose to spend all that time baking cookies and going to piano recitals. That was your decision. I needed someone to make sure the kids were supervised and fed, not to play house." Each word drove deeper into my heart. 4 years of early mornings and late nights. 4 years of school projects and nightmares and celebrations. 4 years of loving these children with everything I had. "Is that really all I am to you?" After all this time, I whispered. Thomas had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but he did not take the words back. "Look, you are good with the kids, they like you, but let us not pretend this is something it is not. You get free housing, and get to play mom to kids who are not yours. I get childcare without the hassle of coordinating with an agency. It works." I stood there, unable to form words through the pain. As I turned to leave, I realized Noah was standing in the hallway, his small face pale with shock. How much had he heard? His wide eyes met mine, filled with confusion and hurt. "Noah, honey," I began, but he turned and ran to his room. I found him curled under his blanket's shoulders, shaking with silent sobs. "Are you leaving us?" he asked in a small, broken voice. "I would never leave you without saying goodbye." I promised, gathering him into my arms. "Try to sleep now. Everything will be okay." It was a promise I was not sure I could keep. Dinner that night had been filled with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. The children sensed something was deeply wrong, and even Thomas seemed to realize he had crossed a line he could not uncross. We barely spoke as we moved around each other in the kitchen, the silence punctuated only by the necessary questions about lunches for tomorrow and permission slips that needed signing. That night I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling. 4 years of gradually being devalued and taken for granted. 4 years of pouring love into children who needed it desperately, while their father treated me as a convenient household service. I thought of Jackson's rare but precious smiles when he shared his photographs with me. I thought of Lily's arms around my waist as we baked together in the kitchen. I thought of Noah's proud face when he read his first complete book. And I thought of Thomas's words, "You are just a babysitter." Somewhere in those dark hours before dawn, I made my decision. I deserved more than this. And ironically, the children deserved more too. They deserved to see what healthy relationships looked like. They deserved to see that love should not mean martyrdom, and that women were not convenient appliances to be used and undervalued. I needed to show them through my actions, not just my words, that self-respect mattered, that boundaries mattered, that people who truly love you do not exploit your nurturing nature until there is nothing left. The realization was both painful and freeing. I knew what I had to do. I woke before the sun, my mind clear despite the sleepless night. The house was silent as I moved quietly to the desk in the corner of the bedroom. Thomas slept on, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred within me. I took out 3 sheets of stationery and began to write. A letter for Jackson explaining that my leaving was not his fault, that I was proud of the young man he was becoming, and that I would always be available to him if he needed me. A letter for Lily filled with encouragement for her gentle spirit and creative heart, promising that distance would not diminish my love for her. And finally, a letter for Noah with simple words he could read himself, assuring him that sometimes adults need to make hard choices, but that he would always have a special place in my heart. I did not write a letter for Thomas. There was nothing left to say. With shaking hands, I packed a single suitcase with essential clothing and personal items. My jewelry box, the photo album I had made with Lily, the handmade birthday cards from Noah, the framed photograph Jackson had taken of all of us at the lake last summer. I looked around the room that had been mine for 4 years at the life I had built and was now leaving. My throat tightened with grief, but my resolve did not waver. This was necessary not just for me, but ultimately for everyone. I moved silently down the hallway, pausing outside each child's room. Through Jackson's partially open door, I could see him sleeping, one arm flung over his face, looking younger than his 16 years. Lily was curled on her side, her dark hair spread across the pillow, clutching the stuffed rabbit she pretended she was too old for. Noah's room was last, and I allowed myself one moment to watch his peaceful breathing, to memorize the freckles across his nose and the way his eyelashes rested against his cheeks. Placing the letters on the kitchen table, I removed my house key from my keyring and set it beside them. I did not prepare breakfast or pack lunches or set out clothes as I normally would. Thomas would need to handle that himself today. The weight of what I was doing threatened to overwhelm me as I stood in the kitchen one last time. I was walking away from children I loved deeply, children who had already experienced the profound loss of their mother. But staying would only teach them that love meant sacrificing yourself until nothing remained that women existed to serve without recognition or respect. As the first pale light of dawn broke across the sky, I lifted my suitcase and walked out the front door, closing it softly behind me. The click of the latch felt like the period at the end of a long, complicated sentence. I had called my old friend Margaret the night before after I had made my decision. She lived across town and had offered her guest room without hesitation when I explained the situation. Her warm, concerned voice had been the first indication that my situation with Thomas was not normal, was not what I deserved. "Of course you can stay here, Jeannie," she had said, "for as long as you need. I have been worried about you for years." The taxi arrived silently, headlights cutting through the morning mist. As we pulled away from the house, I did not look back. I could not bear to. Margaret was waiting when I arrived, wearing a robe and holding a mug of coffee. She took one look at my face and opened her arms. I crumbled into them, finally allowing the tears I had been holding back all night. "You did the right thing," she murmured as she led me inside. "It is going to be okay." The first text from Thomas came at 7:45, presumably when he discovered I was gone. "Where are you? The kids need lunches, and Noah cannot find his library book." No concern for me, no acknowledgement of why I might have left, just annoyance at the inconvenience. I did not respond. By 9, the tone had changed. "Jeannie, this is ridiculous. The school called because Noah is upset. Come home and we can talk about whatever is bothering you." By noon, there was an edge of panic. I had to cancel my presentation. Lily will not stop crying. What am I supposed to tell them? By 3, the messages were coming rapidly. "Please just let me know you are safe. The kids are worried sick. And then I cannot handle all 3 of them alone. You know that." The truth was emerging. Without me to manage everything, Thomas was floundering. Years of delegating every aspect of his children's care had left him wholly unprepared to step into the role of actual parent. The school secretary called my cell phone around 3:30. "Mrs. Crawford. I'm so sorry to bother you, but Mr. Crawford was delayed picking up Noah and the boy is quite distressed. He keeps asking for you." I had never corrected the school's assumption that Thomas and I were married. Now I felt a stab of guilt at hearing Noah's distress. "I am not home today," I said carefully. "Is Noah okay?" Mr. Crawford finally arrived, but he seemed quite overwhelmed. Noah was crying about his reading log not being signed. It was all rather unusual. By evening, Thomas's messages had transformed completely. "Jeannie, please. I do not know what Jackson likes to eat. He will not tell me. He just stays in his room. How do you get Lily to do her homework? She just keeps asking for you. Noah will not stop asking when you are coming home. I do not know what to tell him." And finally, the message I never thought I would see from proud, dismissive Thomas. I am sorry for what I said. Please come home. We need you. I need you." At 7:30, the doorbell rang at Margaret's house. Thomas stood on the porch, his hair disheveled, his tie loosened, holding Noah's forgotten stuffed dinosaur. "Noah cannot sleep without this," he said, looking utterly defeated. "And I cannot find the children's medical cards for the doctor. Noah's fever is back." I took the stuffed animal but did not invite him inside. "The cards are in the filing cabinet in the study third drawer under medical. There is children's fever reducer in the bathroom cabinet. Follow the dosing instructions on the package." Thomas's eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. "Jeannie, please come home, just for the kids. They are falling apart." "I was never just a babysitter, Thomas," I said quietly. "I loved them as my own for 4 years while you barely noticed. You do not get to decide I am disposable, and then demand I come back when you realize how much I actually did." "I did not mean what I said," he insisted. "I was tired and frustrated. You know how work has been." "No, I do not know, because you never talked to me about it. You never talked to me about anything important. I was just there to make your life convenient." "That is not true," he protested, but his eyes shifted away, unable to maintain contact. "The kids love you." "Yes, they do. And I love them. Which is why this is so painful. But they deserve to see what healthy relationships look like. They deserve to see that people should be valued and respected. So you are just abandoning them." After they already lost their mother, his tone turned accusatory, attempting to shift the guilt to me. "Do not dare put this on me," I said, my voice steady, despite the anger flaring inside me. "You created this situation by treating me as an employee rather than a partner for years. By dismissing my contributions and taking advantage of my love for your children, I am not abandoning them. I am showing them that sometimes walking away is the healthiest choice you can make." Thomas's shoulders sagged. "Tell me what you want. A salary. More help around the house. I can hire a cleaning service." "You still do not understand," I said sadly. "This was never about money or housework. This was about being valued as a person, as a partner. This was about your children seeing their father actively engaged in their lives rather than outsourcing everything to me. This was about respect." "I respect you," he insisted weakly. "No, Thomas, you do not. But maybe someday you will learn to respect the next woman in your life. For now, you need to go home and be the father your children deserve." I closed the door, gently but firmly leaning against it as tears slid down my cheeks. Margaret appeared from the kitchen, wordlessly handing me a glass of wine. "You held your ground," she said with quiet approval. "That could not have been easy." "It was the hardest thing I have ever done," I admitted. "But it was also necessary." That night I lay awake in Margaret's guest room, haunted by thoughts of 3 children, wondering why another mother figure had disappeared from their lives. But this time was different. I would not vanish completely. I would find a way to maintain my relationship with them while establishing the boundaries that Thomas and I so desperately needed. The first week away from the children was excruciating. Every morning I woke reaching for a lunchbox that was not there to pack. Every afternoon I checked the clock at 3, imagining Noah waiting at the school gates. Every evening I felt the absence of bedtime stories and goodnight hugs like physical pain. Thomas continued his campaign of calls and texts, alternating between guilt trips, apologies, and practical questions about the children's routines. I answered only the questions directly related to the children's well-being, maintaining firm boundaries around everything else. The hardest moments were the calls from the children themselves. Jackson trying to sound grown up but unable to hide the hurt in his voice. Lily openly crying, begging me to come home. Noah confused and heartbroken, asking what he had done wrong. "You did nothing wrong, sweet boy," I assured him during one tearful call. "Sometimes adults need to make hard choices. I love you very much, and that will never change." By the end of that first week, Margaret had helped me find a small 1-bedroom apartment not far from the children's schools. It was nothing like the spacious house I had shared with Thomas, but it was mine. I paid the deposit with money from my own savings account, money I had been setting aside for years just in case. Slowly, I began rebuilding my independent life. I contacted the college where I had worked part-time and inquired about returning to full-time hours. I reconnected with friends who had gradually fallen away during my years with Thomas when all my energy had gone into his family. I bought a few pieces of secondhand furniture and made my new apartment feel like home. Thomas's efforts to bring me back continued unabated. First came the gifts delivered to Margaret's house before I had my own place. Flowers, jewelry, a first edition of my favorite book that must have cost a fortune. I returned them all with short, polite notes, explaining that gifts would not solve our fundamental problems. Then came the promises. He would be more involved with the children. He would work fewer hours. He would hire help for the housework. He would seek counseling for his workaholism. Some of these promises seemed genuine. Others felt like empty words, designed to lure me back into the same dysfunctional pattern. The lowest blow was when he began using the children to pressure me. Noah cried himself to sleep again last night, he would text. Or Lily asked if you do not love them anymore since you left. I maintained contact with the children through approved visits, always in neutral locations, like the park or the children's museum. Thomas initially insisted on being present, hovering awkwardly at the edges of our reunions. Later, as the reality of single parenthood truly set in for him, he became grateful for the breaks these visits provided, allowing me longer periods alone with the children. These visits were bittersweet, the joy of seeing them tempered by the pain of separation. Jackson was withdrawn at first, his teenage pride wounded, unsure whether to blame his father or me for the disruption in his life. Lily was clingy, afraid I would disappear if she let go of my hand. Noah alternated between excited chatter and sudden quiet moments when he would study my face as if memorizing it. Dad does not know how to make pancakes like you, Noah informed me during one visit. He burned them 3 times and then we just had cereal. Dad tried to help me with my history project, Lily reported another time. He actually took a whole afternoon off work. It was not as good as when you help, but he really tried. These small insights into Thomas's new reality were revealing. For the first time, he was experiencing the full weight of parenthood without someone else shouldering the majority of the burden. He had been forced to take parental leave from work, something he had never considered necessary before. He was learning, albeit painfully, what his children actually needed from him. 3 weeks after I left, I received a surprising call from Thomas's sister, Andrea. "I thought you should know that Thomas has been different since you left," she said without preamble. "He is actually showing up for the kids in ways I have not seen since Elizabeth died, maybe even before that." "I am glad to hear it," I said cautiously. "He was awful to you, Jeannie," she continued. "I want you to know that I told him so. We all did, the whole family. He took you completely for granted, and what he said to you that night was unforgivable." Her words were validating. I had spent so many years doubting myself, wondering if I was asking for too much, if my feelings were legitimate. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, my throat tight with emotion. "The kids miss you terribly," Andrea added, "but I told them that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stand up for themselves even when it hurts. I hope you know that you taught them an important lesson by leaving." Meanwhile, my own life was slowly blossoming again. I returned to full-time work at the college, where my colleagues welcomed me back warmly. I joined a book club and a community garden, rediscovering parts of myself that had gone dormant during my years with Thomas. I began painting again, a hobby I had loved in my 30s, but had abandoned when there never seemed to be enough time. 2 months after I left, Thomas asked if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. I agreed, choosing a public cafe where we would both be on neutral ground. He looked different. Thinner, with new lines around his eyes, but somehow more present than he had been in years. He was not checking his phone or glancing around restlessly. His attention was fully on me. "I owe you an apology," he began. "A real one. Not the kind I have been throwing at you to try to get you to come back." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I treated you terribly," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I took advantage of your kindness and your love for the children. I devalued everything you did because it was easier than acknowledging how much I was failing as a father and a partner." The raw honesty surprised me. This did not sound like the Thomas I had known. "What you said that night," he continued, "about me treating you like a babysitter. You were right. I convinced myself that our arrangement was fair because you got to live in my house and be with the kids you loved. But I never treated you like an equal partner. I never gave you the respect you deserved." "No, you did not," I agreed quietly. "These past 2 months have been the hardest of my life," he said. "Harder than when Elizabeth died, because then you came along and shouldered so much of the burden that I never had to fully face it. This time I have had to actually be a parent, actually see my children and their needs." "And how has that been?" I asked. A small, rueful smile crossed his face. Terrifying, exhausting, and occasionally wonderful in ways I never experienced before. I heard Lily laugh last week in a way I had not heard in years, and I realized I had been missing so much by keeping myself at a distance. He took a deep breath. "I have been seeing a therapist. Twice a week. She is helping me understand why I shut down after Elizabeth died, why I threw myself into work and essentially abandoned my children emotionally, even while convincing myself I was providing for them." This was more self-awareness than Thomas had shown in the entire 4 years we had lived together. "I am not asking you to come back," he said, surprising me again. "Not right now, anyway. I know I have a lot of work to do before I could ever deserve another chance. I just wanted you to know that your leaving woke me up. It forced me to face what I had become. And I am trying to be better, not just to win you back, but because my children deserve a father who is actually present in their lives." For the first time since that terrible night, I felt a tension I had not even realized I was carrying begin to ease. Whether or not Thomas and I ever found our way back to each other, it seemed the children would have a more engaged father, and that had always been my deepest wish for them. "Thank you for telling me this," I said. "It means a lot to hear." As I walked home from that meeting, I felt lighter somehow, free to consider what I truly wanted for my future without the weight of worrying that the children would suffer from my absence. They would always have a place in my heart, but perhaps there were many ways to love them without sacrificing myself in the process. 6 months after walking out of Thomas's house in the pre-dawn darkness, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. My small apartment had become a true home, decorated with plants, artwork, and photographs of the children from our weekly visits. I had been promoted at the college, taking on the role of assistant department head, with increased responsibilities that challenged and fulfilled me. Most importantly, I had rediscovered myself beneath the layers of caretaking and compromise that had nearly erased the woman I once was. I joined a hiking group that explored local trails each weekend. I took a pottery class and displayed my lopsided but beloved creations on my kitchen windowsill. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, building a community that supported and valued me for exactly who I was. My relationship with the children had evolved into something different but still precious. Jackson, now 17, had begun asking if he could visit me on his own occasionally. During these visits, he would bring his portfolio of photographs, seeking my honest feedback and guidance. Without the tension that had existed in Thomas's house, Jackson opened up more, sharing his hopes for college and his fears about leaving his siblings. "Dad is different now," he told me during one such visit. "Still kind of awkward sometimes, but he actually asks about my day and listens to the answer. And he comes to all my photography exhibitions, even though I know he would rather be working." Lily, at 13, was blossoming into a confident young woman. She still loved to bake, and sometimes we would spend an afternoon in my tiny kitchen flower, covering every surface as we experimented with new recipes. She had joined the school choir and was thriving under the structure and challenge it provided. "I used to be so mad at you for leaving," she admitted one day as we washed dishes side by side. "But then I heard Dad talking to Aunt Andrea about how he had treated you all those years, and I understood better. I think you taught me something important about standing up for yourself." Noah, now 10, was perhaps the most transformed. With proper support for his dyslexia, which Thomas had finally acknowledged and addressed, Noah was making tremendous progress in school. His confidence had grown, and he no longer defined himself by his struggles with reading. "Dad and I read together every night now," he told me proudly. "Not because I need help anymore, but because we both like it. Sometimes I even read to him when he is tired from work." Thomas himself had undergone the most surprising transformation. True to his word that day in the cafe, he had continued therapy and made significant changes in his life. He had restructured his work schedule to be home by 5 most evenings. He had learned to cook basic meals, help with homework, and truly listen to his children. He had even started a tradition of Adventure Saturdays, where he took all 3 kids on outings they planned together. Our own relationship had slowly healed into something neither of us could have predicted. Not the convenient arrangement of before where I provided free childcare and he provided housing. Not the romantic partnership that had failed so spectacularly. Instead, we had become something like respectful co-allies in raising children we both loved. Thomas no longer tried to win me back with grand gestures or manipulation. Instead, he demonstrated his growth through consistent small actions, checking before scheduling the children during my regular visit times, thanking me genuinely for the positive influence I had on his children's lives, acknowledging my expertise in areas where he still struggled as a parent. "Lily has that big choir performance next week," he might text. "She would love for you to be there. I saved you a seat with the family if you can make it." Or, "Noah is struggling with this science project. Would you mind taking a look when you see him Saturday? You always know how to explain things in ways he understands." Each of these small moments of respect helped heal the wounds of those painful years, not to rebuild what was, but to create something healthier for all of us. One evening in early autumn, as the leaves were just beginning to turn, Thomas and I sat on a park bench watching the children play basketball on the nearby court. Jackson was patiently teaching Noah a new dribbling technique, while Lily cheered them on between turns with the ball. "I need to thank you, Thomas," said suddenly, his eyes still on the children. "For what?" "For leaving," he replied simply. "It was the wake-up call I desperately needed. When you walked out that morning, it shattered the comfortable delusion I had built around myself. That I was a good father because I provided financially. That I was a good partner because I allowed you to love my children." He turned to face me. "You walking away forced me to become the father they deserved. The man I should have been all along. It was the hardest gift anyone has ever given me, but it changed everything." I thought about his words for a long moment, watching the children laugh together on the court. "It was never about you, you know," I finally said. "My decision to leave. It was about me finally recognizing that I deserved more than being taken for granted. That loving someone does not mean accepting whatever scraps of appreciation they are willing to offer." I know that now, he nodded. "And the kids know it too. Especially Lily. She talks about how you taught her to value herself by valuing yourself enough to leave an unhealthy situation." A warmth spread through my chest at the thought that my painful choice might have given Lily a model for her own future relationships. That perhaps she would never allow herself to be diminished the way I had been for so long. My life now was not perfect, but it was authentically mine. I had less money and a smaller home, but more joy and self-respect than I had known in years. I had proven to myself that walking away from something that diminishes you is not failure but courage. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and ultimately for others, is to refuse to participate in your own devaluation. The children still needed me, but now it was a healthier need. Not the desperate need of abandoned souls seeking a mother substitute, but the natural need of young people for another caring adult who loves them unconditionally. Thomas still needed me too, but now as a co-parent and friend who could offer perspective and support without being consumed by his family. And I had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that the strongest caregivers must first care for themselves. That my value did not lie in how much I could give until I was empty, but in my willingness to model self-respect and healthy boundaries for the children I loved. As I watch the sun setting over this park bench, I wonder about you, my friends. Have you ever found yourself pouring love into a relationship that took you for granted? Have you stood at that crossroads between staying for others and leaving for yourself? I hope my story gives you the courage to choose yourself when necessary. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply walk away, trusting that those who truly love us will either rise to meet us or release us to find the respect we deserve elsewhere. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by how much they sacrifice for others. Leave a comment below if you have ever had to make a difficult choice between staying and leaving. Thank you for listening, and remember, true love, whether for others or yourself, should always make you more, not less.